Hello friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com and I'd like to welcome you back to my tarot parlor. This video on the number 8 continues the series I began last year, assigning meaning to the numbers according to suit and, if at all, to the corresponding number of the major arcana card. The 3 decks I've chosen for this video are: the top deck is the Tarocchi Fina della Torre out of Bologna from the 1600s. I'm not sure if it's out of print now or if it's available for purchase any longer. I do know that I purchased mine from the International Museum of Tarocchi out of Bologna. The second deck is a deck that I got for free, graciously, from Benabel Wen and whoever it is who owns and operates this website, darktarot.com. About 2 years ago, Benabel posted that they were giving this deck out for free to anyone who had an interest in receiving it. And I said, yeah, okay. And they sent me one. And that was how easy it was, and very graciously received it. I believe now that you can still get this deck for print for free if you want to print it yourself, as I said, at darktarot.com. And if you're clever enough to be able to download the images to a service like playingcards.com or something like that, you can print your own free deck. So I think that's a lovely thing. And it's one of my favorite decks, actually. It's a nice deck. And for good measure, the third deck that I've represented here is a Tarot of Marseille deck, specifically the Nicholas Convert Tarot from 1760. Now, getting back to this darktarot.com deck, I don't know what influence or what deck it was based on. I do think that it's based on some type of Italian or Etruscan influences out of Italy. I say that because these do look like they're a bit Greek to me, but I don't know. At any rate, these videos will probably be of most interest to those individuals who are wanting to learn to read with pip-style cards, whether they be TDM referencing Milan or TDM out of Marseille or any modern-day pip-style deck. It's important to understand that in order to understand where tarot is coming from, you literally need to understand where tarot is coming from and the lens through which tarot was created, which was late medieval and early Renaissance Italy. Now, the suits, as we've discussed at length in the various videos that I've presented, would have certainly borne a familiarity with the Renaissance public. For example, the aristocracy would most certainly have been associated with, with the suit of swords. I don't know if that was their intention, but it was, you create what you know, right? And so if you need 4 suits for a game of cards, certainly some of it was based on the Mameluke, the delivery of the card system out of the Middle East, where they had, swords, they had cups, they had polo sticks, and they had money. And so in a general sense, they did get their suits from the Middle East. But, you elaborate with your own style and with your own, cultural references. And so, eventually they made it, they made the suits, cups, batons, and coins their own. But getting back to the associations with the caste system, I would be very tempted to agree with the concept that the 4 suits would have been associated with the different class distinctions. Aristocracy and people in power would have certainly been the swords. The clergy at that time would have been associated with the cups. Batons would most certainly have been associated with field workers or people who worked, physical labor. And then coins would have been most certainly associated with the merchants, the people who exchanged cash and coin. Nowadays, we might associate our suits differently because we don't have such a distinct caste system, although we certainly understand the category of haves and have-nots, but it's not as clear as it once was. So for the suit of swords today, we might assign them to people of the military. Certainly they're the ones that have weapons. well, I guess they're not the only people in our society who have weapons, but they're the people who have the most legitimate reason to have weapons. We can also think of swords as a reference to justice and people of authority. And as a matter of fact, justice coincides with the number 8, so we've got her side for later. So for matters of justice and authority and law, we might associate those matters with the suit of swords. With the suit of cups, we no longer, necessarily consider, becoming a priest, because let's face it, it would have been Catholic Italy that these cards would have come from. We no longer maybe aspire to grow up to be, sisters and priests of the Catholic Church. In fact, there's so much controversy against them, we sort of disassociate ourselves from it. But there's no point in denying where these cards come from. This is where they come from. And so nowadays we would have adjusted the suit of cups to, include anyone who was maybe emotionally empathetic. Certainly it's a suit of, matters of the heart. How the social suit, a suit of being with your people, being with the people of your heart. It also could be associated with very artistic people who the kind of artistry I'm referencing would be people who maybe write poetry, people who write music, people who maybe sing, people who are like poets, just in their, maybe a bohemian lifestyle. The batons would have been associated with people who and maybe still do, people who create things with their hands, high energy people who can't sit still for a second, people who enjoy being active, certainly an active lifestyle. And coins finally would still have to do with the material world, creature comforts, things, the benefits that money can buy. That might also include education. So now we have an understanding of what the suits might represent, and now how do we merge that with the number 8? Now, if we keep in mind that everything that was all symbology would have been referencing or been associated, if not outwardly referencing, a Renaissance understanding, the number 8 probably would call to mind that Christ ascended into heaven on the 8th day. He didn't rise from the dead on the 8th day, but he ascended into heaven on the 8th day. And that is a definition for the number 8 that seems to have transcended the years, where we think of 8 as a continuum or a new beginning, a kind of a rebirth, a continuation of something that has already been set into motion. In mathematics, 8 has many auspicious characteristics which are way above my pay grade, so I'm not even going to pretend that I understand them. I know Buddhism. In Buddhism, 8 is a lucky number, and that might be a reference to the 8 petals of the lotus, which is a favorable plant associated with luck in India. As I had mentioned with the number 7 determines the life of a woman. It's been thought that the number 8 determines that of the life of a man. A boy gets his first teeth at 8 months, loses them at 8 years, reaches puberty at 2 times 8, which is 16, and generally it was believed lost his sexual virility at around the age of 64. And probably this was decided at a time when people were really lucky to make it to 64. Now, there's lots of cool things to associate the number 8 with. Being behind the 8 ball is an English expression suggesting that there's an embarrassing situation, or someone is out of luck, or someone's in trouble. In ancient Rome, the 8th day was an important day to a newborn child. It was believed that if the child survived to the 8th day, they were worth attention, because times were a little on the rough side. And so it was on the 8th day that a baby was rubbed with salt for protection against evil spirits. There are 8 points in the wheel of the cycle of the year. which are celebrated by people with close associations to the earth, and certainly people of the medieval and Renaissance times, despite their religious affiliations, they would have been people who would have had a keen awareness of the 8 seasonal markers of the year, which are only spaced at roughly about 6 weeks apart. There are not too many references to the Bible, and the only one that I do recall, I think I recall 2, that there were 8 people on Noah's Ark, and also that Christ ascended into heaven on the 8th day. Now, if we consider that the number 8 comes after the number 7, especially when we're referencing the major arcana card where the call to mind the Chariot, which suggests a level of achievement, the 8 is also associated with the beginning of a new era, or that of a new order. As I mentioned, you know, the reference to Christ ascending into heaven on the 8th day. But we can also think of 8 as a continuing of the status quo. Not every tarot reading you're going to have where the number 8 pops up is going to have the incredible reference to, you know, a new life order. You know, it could just mean the status quo will continue. There was some confusion with the esoterics of the 18th and 19th century in reassigning the number 8 from justice to the strength card. And I guess this is as good a time as any to present the 8th major arcana. Let me clear the screen. Now, admittedly, the key element of the numerology number 8 is power and strength. It is the combination of 2 worlds, material and spiritual together in one point, like the infinity symbol, which the number 8 greatly resembles. This might be the reason that the number 8 was changed in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition to represent fortitude rather than justice. The concept of fortitude has come to represent power and strength, and conveniently aligns with Leo, which is in the 8th month. So I can understand to some degree the reasoning behind switching the positions of justice and fortitude in the sequence. But bear in mind that fortitude is not necessarily about brute and physical force, but rather refers to fortitude as a strength of character. At any rate, but since early days, the number 8 had been associated with the concept of justice, which, like fortitude, also reflects power and strength, and often physical strength, since justice often deals with the concepts of crime and punishment, both of which might represent a type of physical power and strength, and is also associated with the ability to make wise decisions. Think of the famous story of Solomon in deciding who the baby belonged to, which mother did the child belong to. If you don't know the story, there were two mothers who presented a child, each claiming the child was her own, and one mother, so Solomon said, well, let's split the baby in 2 and we'll give you each half. That's the fair thing to do. You'll each get half of the baby. One mother was fine with that, and the other mother said, no, give the baby to the other woman. And so, of course, Solomon recognized that the genuine mother would have been the mother who would have sacrificed having the child for the child's greater good. And so, you know, this is the type of mental acuity you would need in the position of justice and having that power. We mentioned that number 7 is a kind of achievement coming off of the Chariot. And 8 suggests a continuation, but maybe with a greater understanding or a higher level of achievement. So by the time, or accomplishment. So by the time we get to 8, we're well on our way. We're not at the beginning stages. We're at the end stages of either accomplishing something or seeing something through. There is no ignoring how much the number 8 resembles the lemniscate, or the infinity sign, more commonly referred to as the symbol for infinity. The reference to infinity reinforces the idea that 8 is a number of continuations. To Homer, justice represented order within society, the concept that wrongs must be corrected to restore order in a society, and modern society still adheres to the ideal of these concepts of law and order. Now, I know from my own experience in learning, your own life path teaches you certain lessons at certain points in your life. And I ended up late in life marrying a 30-year military man. He served the U.S. Air Force for 30 years. And I've learned through him that in military command, the structure of military command, individuals are not ever to question the directives of their officers, because it potentially leads to disorder and injustice and puts everyone's life at risk, especially during times of war. Questioning a military superior can lead to mutiny, chaos, and disorder within a squadron. For mutiny to happen, it means that the men and women of the squadron recognize an extreme problem with the integrity of their leaders' decision-making progress. So in order for mutiny to happen, there has to be an extreme condition that warrants it the only option. This measure can also be used to judge the health of a society. If a society or corporation is harmonious and peaceful, it's probably because it's being run by good and just leaders. If a society or business falls into chaos, it's a sure sign of corruption and bad judgment. With these ideas of justice being like a well-oiled machine, we can understand the lemniscate of the figure 8 representing a continuum of peace, a peaceful ebb and flow of existence. It becomes less the concept of a finite quantity and more a concept of a continuum, a kind of cosmic balance and order, in much the same way that the scales of justice remain balanced. In an uncanny way of a type of poetic justice, the balanced scales of justice remind one of the balanced loops of the number 8, which would have been known to the European world by the 1500s, even if the lemniscate had not been invented by mathematicians until the late 1600s. So the number 8 would have been introduced to the Italians by the 1500s from the Arabic world. And they would have recognized that symbol, they would have recognized or been able to identify the number 8 as being a number of continuation, even if the mathematician, I forget his name, who invented the lemniscate, hadn't introduced it to their world until the 1600s. Now let's take a look at the 3 justice cards. And justice, since the beginning of time, always seems to have seems to be represented by a sword and by a scale. Usually a woman, a sword and a scale, a sword and a scale, and she's usually a woman. Interestingly, in most tarot decks, she's, I think, sometimes the only individual who will look straight on to the viewer, like she sees you. You can run, but you can't hide from justice. In some decks, she may be blindfolded, and in some very early representations of justice, she may have been blindfolded, but then that changed, and she became represented by an individual who needs to see the facts, and so she's not blindfolded. It used to be the idea that you don't want to have prejudice, so you don't want to see who it is that you're judging, because you want to have it be, less biased, But then it was determined, that you need to see everything. You need to see all the facts, and you need to see every detail, because that is the only way that you can truly be fair. So there we have it, the number 8 and justice. I hope it's enlightened your world in some way. I apologize that it's taking me so long to get this series done, but life happens, and there's lots of demands put on me, as there are for most people, and so I get these done as I can, but I am committed to getting them done. So you can always look forward to the next one, which will be 9 and then 10, and then I'll see what I'll come up with to continue the numbers from 11 through 21. Please, if you like this, please do give me a thumbs up. My website, my YouTube page could use some love. My website could use some love, tarotclarity.com. And as always, I thank you for your time. Until next time, peace.